everybody. I wanted to make sure we spend some time going over Chapter 2. But before we go into Chapter 2, I want to make sure you remember the transactional model from Chapter 1. So remember, you've got your sender and you've got your receiver, and you've got this message that they've got going on between the two of them. So there's also the noise that's going on. It can be internal and it can be external, the things that we all hear. You've got the sender that encodes that message. They have to kind of formulate that message and make sense of that before they can compose it and say it to the receiver. So then the receiver will hear it. They will actively listen to that. They will process that. They will decode that message so that they can then process, make connections, and see what it was that the sender was truly saying to them. You have this channel by which they're communicating, and that in this particular situation would be face-to-face. It could also be through the computer. It could be through text message. It could be through a wide range of different channels. But that is that transactional model that we go through on a regular basis. You have engaged in this process today. You probably will engage in it a variety of times throughout today. So let's go on to Chapter 2, which is going over communication, culture, and diversity. So we're going to talk a little bit about classroom, social media, workplace, medical professionals, and family members. And remember that we have to be competent communicators. So think about your values. We all have different values. You have a different value system. Mine might be a little bit different from yours. Yours might be a little bit different from your parents. Yours might be a little bit different from your best friends. But we all have values. And those are those things that we hold closest to our heart. Okay? So those kind of focus and keep our our lens, our scope for life. So those are defined as what we believe is right, good, important, and necessary. We consider these highly desirable, and they give our life meaning. So maybe you think that a good grade would give your life some meaning, or money would give your life some meaning, or friendship, or love, or health, or calm, and all of that. So those are what values are. Now, culture. I think people kind of start getting confused when we start throwing in this idea of culture. We're really good about identifying what cultural items are, but when it comes to culture, it's might be a little more difficult to kind of capture that item. But culture is the distinctive ideas, customs, social behavior, products, or way of life of a particular nation, society, people, or period. So think about that. Those particular rituals that you go through as like a family or as a social group, those become part of your culture. So maybe it is the way that you celebrate Christmas. Maybe it is the fact that you celebrate Christmas. Maybe it's some unique item that you have adopted, and it has some kind of significant meaning within your family or social group or area in which you affiliate. Those have great influences on your communication process. So that is your culture. So a great example of this would be like the power struggle that happens and that occurs between a parent and a teenager. Maybe it is the use of a vehicle. You want to use the vehicle and the parent does not want you to use the vehicle. Or you want to drive alone and the parent does not want you to drive alone. Any of those kinds of things could potentially demonstrate that power struggle, which is an element of culture. Okay, so those are just one. That's just one example of how culture can be demonstrated. Now, we have a wide variety of different kinds of cultural context. I will give you a few of these as examples. It's not really important to know lots of detail about each and every single one of these. I'll hit some highlights on some of these. So for individualistic versus a collective culture, an individualistic culture would be kind of like the United States. The United States really focuses in on the individual award. We want our individual recognition, and we want to be identified for what we have contributed on an individual basis. A collective culture is going to be more concerned about the good of the group as opposed to the individual person within that group. So that is the distinction between those two different cultural perspectives. There's no distinction between right and wrong. It's just a difference between those perspectives. You could also have how much uncertainty you can manage and deal with. Maybe you can handle a whole lot of uncertainty. Maybe you completely avoid uncertainty at all cost. So those could be just differences within your cultural practices. I'll post this video separately. It just kind of illustrates some cultural elements about space and how we use space and things like that. So we also have race and ethnicity, and I do think that this is some, we tinge in some areas that we confuse. Race is that physical, those physical characteristics of the group. Ethnicity that is the common experience. So skin color, skin texture, things of that nature does not fit into ethnicity. Those are two very different components. We also have sex, gender, and sexual orientation. Sex is the biological component. That is what you were born with. Gender is how we kind of socially construct, and then sexual orientation would be the attraction. Now, we also have this idea of muted group theory. So think about any group that you may identify yourself as being a part of. And if you are part of a group that has less of a voice, like not the dominant group, you would be considered part of a muted group, which would fit into muted group theory. So, for example, let's just take the idea or the concept of teenagers in general. If you were to try to have a large protest and rally a whole bunch of teenagers together to try to lower the age for driving. Let's say you want to make the age to allow independent driving 14. If you were to rally this group and try to make some kind of change, this would be a muted group because typically that age group does not have a large voice. It's not a voice that gets to vote. It's not a voice that gets to have a large say in change. Therefore, that is a muted group. So now that could potentially change, but chances are that is a muted group. Our age will have an impact on our experiences. So think about the perspective that people come from. If you are from the greatest generation, you're going to look at things very differently than if you are from if you are a millennial. Those kinds of things will really change how you look at a thing like technology. It will have a major difference in your perspective. You can also talk about or look at the lens of physical and cognitive diversity. If you have some kind of physical handicap or any kind, even if it's a temporary situation, if you were trying to navigate the main campus, it is not very friendly for anything on wheels. I have pushed a cart around campus, and you have to kind of go all the way around campus. You can't just go straight to your destination. It makes it very difficult. And think about a cognitive situation. Those also make things a little bit more different for that individual. So we've got a lot of different levels of diversity. We've also got ideological. So not everyone has the same ideas and beliefs. People have different backgrounds. We also have religious variety within our cultures. Now, the biggest takeaway from this culture and diversity chapter 2, is that you want to make sure that you are shaping that message that you use when you're communicating to others. You want to make your information very accessible. You want to bring in as opposed to isolate, and you want to find ways to bridge that information. Don't highlight differences with others. You want to avoid ist language. So anything that can be like a sexist, an elitist, any kind of ist language. You want to avoid that. And I hope this has been beneficial for you. Have a wonderful remainder of your day.